Another ship from Star Citizen's lengthy unreleased concept backlog is coming to the game by the end of the year, as confirmed last week.
We got the Apollos coming before the end of the year.
But is Star Citizen actually ready for this? Medical gameplay is basically still in the same state it was back in November of 2021, and drones, which the ship does depend on, haven't had any updates since John Crew elaborated on their use in 2023 for Squadron 42. Of course.
The Apollo. There are multiple scenarios in Squadron, mostly in the side missions that make use of them. So they are on the vehicle feature team schedule in the near future to essentially do a lightweight ship IFCS that is remote controlled that will be the foundational aspect of drones in the PU.
With CIG's statement back in 2021-ish, which I still can't find, we know they don't want to release ships without their primary gameplay in-game. But how far does that statement really go if, technically, medical gameplay isn't the game? Today we're going to look at the RSI Apollo, a very hyped ship originally sold back in 2018, and given what the company has said about medical gameplay, the features that need to be in the game before this is released. Thank you for coming to my Tomato Talk. The RSI Apollo was concepted as a medium-sized medical clinic. Think an RSI Zeus, but better looking and more focused on keeping your insides on the inside. It has two key points that players are interested in. First is the modular design, allowing for a combination of medical beds to help with whatever job you're looking to take on as a medic in the verse. You could choose to equip 2 Tier 1 beds, as shown in the most recent teaser image from the June monthly report. This will result in the smallest form factor in the whole game that can handle any medical situation. But you can also go with a selection of 4 Tier 2 beds or 6 Tier 3 beds. These will all come as modules, but the ship will originally come with Tier 3 beds confirmed back during the concept reveal.
The ship that you get will have the Tier 3 beds, and how we choose to roll out the Tier 1 and 2, we will decide once the tech for that comes online and we know more.
Now that they have the tech online and they do know more, these should be answers they are providing to players very, very soon. Because I already know this is going to be a topic of conversation when it does come up. Mark it down, mark it on your notebooks. This modularity though allows for more focused gameplay. Maybe you're assisting your org with respawns and need top quality. Or maybe you just want to sit out in a public hot zone like the Hathor facilities and act as a potential healing spot for folks in need. This is a hard call to make though, because we still don't know what the end goal is for medical gameplay. A lot revolves around injuries and which beds can heal which ailments, but a lot also comes down to respawning. With the ridiculous Ursa medical trailer released last year,
I've died 1,000 times.
Death has been made something a little trivial by CIG in a game where they want death to actually mean something. I still can't get over how obviously they botched that messaging, but it's out in the open now. So questions remain around how valuable a Tier 1 bed really is, and how useful this ship could really be in the game world versus something like a Medical Pisces or a Cutlass Red. The other gameplay element this ship needs are drones. Rescue operations are a big part of a medical ship like this, going out to battlefields, approaching hazardous locations, and generally just not wanting to get out of your ship. Putting aside the player possibilities, CIG has already shown in their plans for medical gameplay that medical contracts are meant to be the bread and butter of medically oriented players. We've had simple search and rescue missions for dead NPCs in caves and distribution centers, but there's clearly meant to be a multitude of locations players can explore and search for missing persons and injured characters. These encounters would challenge you to scan and identify what the problem is, triage the issues on hand, and either get the player back up on their feet or return to a central location if needed. In many instances, it just won't make sense for you to leave the ship to do this. Instead, you'll have remote-controlled medical gurneys that you can pilot out to the character to pick up and bring back to the ship. This character would then load into the medical beds on board for you to run whatever operations you need to. These two key features made for a pretty unique ship that, at 43 meters in length, hit a healthy medium-sized spot above the Cutlass Red, but below larger dedicated medical vessels. but there isn't much currently in the plans that make this seem like a good choice for dedicated medical players over the Cutlass Red, besides the options in medical bed support. While I do think that is enough to get some good adoption, I don't think it'll lead to this being a very used ship, and likely will end with a lot of players trading it in for something else. Medical beds are very valuable at the moment, but without much information on deeper medical gameplay, the ship itself feels a bit like a glorified respawn point. CIG should not release this ship unless there are some notable improvements to medical gameplay and obviously drones. Let's talk about what those changes could be. The overall advancement of medical gameplay is in a precarious state. As with all things in Star Citizen, this is a profession that players have tied their in-game identity to. CIG has sold the idea of a game that can support multiple fully fledged career paths for players. That means finding a beginner-flavored version of your career choice, progressing through it in either PvE or PvP-focused scenarios, pursuing ships that thrive in that category of gameplay, and making enough money to support the other things you want to do in the game. As of right now, medical gameplay mostly boils down to identifying injuries in yourself or others, and hitting that auto button on your medical tool to apply just the right amount of drugs to mask your injuries without overdosing. That on its own is a great opportunity for growth. The amount and variety of drugs and injuries in the game right now is pretty good, but having an auto button that can solve the hard parts for you really lessens the value of a dedicated medic, or even simply learning more about said drugs and injuries. With the risk of radiation damage, cold or hot derived injuries, gunshot wounds, blunt force trauma, fall damage, head and limb injuries, and tummy aches, there are a lot of ways medical gameplay can be mixed up on the spot, calling for actual knowledge of how to handle a situation. But for those looking for surgical minigames in the Apollo, nothing is known, and so nothing should be assumed. I do think it would be a huge missed opportunity to release a ship like this into the game without some better informed triage logic, more in-depth treatment procedures, or higher risk decision making surrounding drug application. But much like we've seen with the cargo refactor, these kinds of things will absolutely lead to outcry from the majority of players who don't want in-depth medical gameplay to hamper their gameplay experience, which is reasonable. So finding a way to introduce more hardcore medical elements without shoehorning them into the most basic interactions like simple injuries, bleeding, and medical pen usage is the challenge I wish we saw CIG tackling in recent monthly reports, but I can confirm we've heard nothing so far. So we then return to potential contracts. I admit medical gameplay could remain the same as the Apollo arrives. It would be disappointing, but medical contracts could still make the release much better. We can see the potential of medical supply runs focusing on maintaining at-risk items like organs, blood, and fragile drug compounds. This would likely depend on the engineering system that allows for players to control the climate on their ships, but could have additional variables only found in medical ships. There could be search and rescue missions, which could be fleshed out to include an active scanning and identifying component. More information forcing you to make decisions of treating patients in a risky environment or medevacing them back to a hospital if needed. These are contracts that have been suggested by CIG, so I could expect them to show up on the contract manager when we see a ship that relies so heavily on this gameplay, coming after their big statement about not bringing ships in without their primary gameplay back in 2021. Will it happen? I definitely hope so, but as of now, like I said, there aren't really any signs. The final place we could see improvements in medical gameplay is medical beacons. It has been possible to send out and receive medical beacons before. I had a great time with my friend AAK trying to help a lost soul out in Orison, which turned into a whole adventure over on the gameplay channel. You can check that out, I'll link it below. But in recent years, these beacons have been hit or miss, at times completely removed, and ultimately underfeatured. There is very little information given to either party on the progress of the beacon or the player who's dying. Without NPCs to support rescuing players, if there are no other players around, it can lead to massive wait times which nobody wants to endure. And nobody can really trust beacons without a rating or reputation system that works. It could always be a trap on either side. And this last point is why I'm less hopeful about this. We know service beacons and interface to interact with them and the ratings you get from accomplishing them are in the plans. We've seen as much. But I don't believe the social tool upgrade that we all know Star Citizen desperately needs is due for this year. which the Apollo is. The gameplay for the ship does exist. The tools have been shown, the contracts have been theorized, and the drones have been worked on, considering they are necessary for base building, which I do believe is a pretty high priority for the company. But one, if not multiple of these things needs to see a change when this ship does arrive to support it, for the sake of the ship itself and the medical community. CIG has a challenge on their hands. Every single piece of gameplay in this game has players looking for a deeper experience and a mass of players saying, does anyone really want this? They need to foster systems that allow for participation without forcing it. They need to be easy to pick up and try, but difficult to master. And considering every player has to deal with their own health, this one might be even more complex than the physicalized cargo problem. This ship could be the cornerstone of the medical gameplay in Star Citizen. It could introduce a new shift in the way the game is understood. Following up on the current regen crisis, it could also narratively fit very well into the current progress of development. But with few signs that any of this is going to happen, I'm not going to get your hopes up. If triage, drones, and rescue systems are nowhere to be seen by the time this ship is coming in later in the year, I would say Star Citizen is not actually ready for the RSI Apollo. And I hope CIG will focus on at least one of these segments to be ready when it arrives. Hopefully this has given you something to consider. While this will be a huge hit to the backlog, it doesn't necessarily indicate forward progress for the game. That being said, this, along with a few other ships, are making for a pretty exciting back half of 2025 going into 2026 for ship releases, and I'll be covering the details around them on this channel. I'll be getting into even more detail over on Space Tomato 2, and I'll hit you with the gameplay previews and first impressions over on Space Tomato Plays. Feel free to subscribe for more content if you're interested, and let me know which ship you'd like to see next. I think I'll be taking a look at one of 2 potential Drake releases sometime soon. Thank you for watching this video until the end. I hope you learned something new in it, and I'll catch you in the next.